Welcome to Brain Bites, the podcast of big ideas in small bites. Each episode is a quick journey into fascinating topics, from science, society, life's mysteries, to intriguing insights you can take one bite at a time. What's the most pain a human can endure? In today's bite, we push the boundaries of human endurance.
All right, let's dive into something a little, intense this time. Pain. We all experience it, but have you ever wondered just how much you could actually handle?
It's a question that fascinates a lot of people.
It's a bit heavy, I know, but that's what we're doing today. We're taking a deep dive into the science and surprising realities of pain.
Yeah, and we've got a really interesting article here that explores some of the most painful experiences humans can endure.
And get this. It even gets into how subjective pain can be. Like, did you know that even gender can play a role in how we experience it?
It's true. The research on whether men or women tolerate pain more is actually pretty mixed.
Really? I would have thought there'd be a clear answer by now.
It's a lot more complicated than you might think. Some studies suggest that men might have a higher pain threshold, but some researchers believe that societal expectations might be at play here, not just biology. You know, the whole boys don't cry thing?
Interesting. It makes you wonder how researchers even go about studying something as subjective as pain.
That's the challenge. I mean, there was a study at Cornell back in the 1940s where they were trying to find a comparison point for childbirth pain.
Okay, how do you even begin to compare anything to childbirth? What did they do? Pinch people?
You're not far off. They used burning sensations.
Burning sensations. Ouch.
Yeah, they were trying to measure pain in a quantifiable way, which, as you can imagine, is incredibly difficult.
I can see that. Everyone's pain tolerance is different. Like, some people faint at the sight of blood, while others can power through some pretty intense stuff.
Exactly. And that's what makes studying pain so tricky. There's no one-size-fits-all measurement that can really capture the subjective experience of it.
So true. But even though we know it's subjective and tough to measure, this article dives into some specific examples of things that cause us serious pain, and they kick things off with, get ready for it, burns.
Makes sense. Burns are a universal experience of pain.
And this might sound a little strange, but the article mentions that sometimes severe burns can actually hurt less than less severe ones, at least initially.
It's all about the nerves. With a really severe burn, like a third-degree burn, it often damages the nerves so much that a person might not feel as much pain right away.
So you're saying they're so badly burned they don't even feel it. That's wild.
It is wild, but it's the after effects that are the real problem.
The treatment.
Exactly. The treatment for those severe burns is often described as incredibly painful. Skin grafts, wound care, physical therapy, it can be excruciating.
So it's the long game, the healing process that's really brutal.
You got it. Burns are nothing to mess with. Speaking of intense pain.
Yeah. Let's move on from burns to something a bit smaller but just as mighty. Insect stings. And the king of pain in this category has to be the bullet ant.
Oh yeah, the bullet ant. That's a whole other level of ouch.
This little guy sits right there at the top of the Schmidt Sting Pain Index, which, by the way, is a real thing. It's how scientists measure the pain of insect stings.
I'm vaguely terrified and oddly fascinated by that index.
You and me both. And the article describes a bullet ant sting in a way that's, pretty hard to forget.
How do they put it?
Get this. They say it's like firewalking over flaming charcoal with a 3-inch rusty nail in your heel.
Wow, that's visual.
Right. Makes you really not want to mess with a bullet ant, ever. And if that description alone isn't enough, there's actually a tribal initiation in Brazil that involves wearing a glove filled with these things.
Wait, seriously? A glove full of bullet ants?
You better believe it.
Yeah.
Maybe something for our listeners to look up later if they're feeling brave.
Or maybe not. Let's move on from the creepy crawlies to something a bit more internal, shall we? Moving on from the world of insects and burns, the article then shifts its focus to a type of pain that originates from within. Cluster headaches.
Which, if I remember correctly, are described as being so severe that some people compare them to childbirth.
Exactly. And what makes them even worse is that they can last for an incredibly long time. We're talking hours, even days.
Oh man, I get tension headaches every now and then, and those are bad enough. I can't imagine something that intense for days on end.
It's a whole other level of pain, and it can be completely debilitating for people who experience them.
The article mentions people screaming, writhing, completely overwhelmed by these headaches. It sounds utterly awful.
It truly is. And what makes them even more challenging from a medical standpoint is that there's no known cure for cluster headaches. Treatments are focused on managing the pain and reducing the frequency of the attacks.
So what are researchers doing to try and help people who suffer from these debilitating headaches? Are there any promising treatments on the horizon?
Researchers are constantly exploring new avenues for treatment, and believe it or not, some are turning to some rather unconventional options like psilocybin and LSD.
Wait, are you serious? Psychedelics as a potential treatment for cluster headaches? That's wild.
It might sound crazy, but there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that these substances, when used in a controlled medical setting, of course, could offer significant relief for some patients. They seem to disrupt the way the brain processes pain signals, offering a break for those who haven't found success with traditional treatments.
That's fascinating. It really highlights how much we still don't know about pain and how it works, but also how science is always pushing the boundaries, searching for new and innovative ways to alleviate suffering. Now, speaking of surprising discoveries, the article takes us across the pond to the UK, where the National Health Service has compiled a list of the world's most painful conditions. And, well, let's just say it challenges some common assumptions about what constitutes excruciating pain.
It really does. You might be surprised by what lands at the top of that list.
Oh, I think I remember this. It's shingles, right? Shingles is ranked as more painful than heart attacks and even cancer. Who knew?
It's a real eye-opener, isn't it? Shingles is often associated with chickenpox, which most people think of as a relatively mild childhood illness.
Yeah, I had chickenpox when I was a kid. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't the worst thing ever.
Right. But for some people, that same virus that causes chickenpox can reactivate later in life as shingles, and it can be incredibly painful. It often causes a painful blistering rash and intense nerve pain.
It's a good reminder that pain can emerge from unexpected sources, that something we might consider a minor ailment can have these long-lasting and painful consequences.
You're absolutely right. And while we're on the topic of unexpected sources of pain, the article also touches on something that many people have unfortunately experienced firsthand. Kidney stones.
Oh man, kidney stones. Those tiny little things can cause an unbelievable amount of pain. I've heard stories.
The stories are true. Passing a kidney stone is notoriously painful, especially as those stones get larger. The pain has been described as sharp, stabbing, and often unbearable.
The article does mention that one of the best ways to prevent those painful little formations is to stay hydrated, right?
Absolutely. Drinking plenty of water is crucial for preventing kidney stones. It's simple advice, but it can make a world of difference.
So drink up, everyone. It's good for you in countless ways, including keeping those pesky kidney stones at bay.
Now, shifting gears from internal pain to something many of us can relate to on some level, the article delves into the world of broken bones. But not just any broken bones. It specifically focuses on the ones that are notoriously painful.
I mean, we've all stubbed a toe or jammed a finger, and those are no walk in the park. But we're talking about a whole other level of pain here, right? Like a ruptured Achilles or a shattered femur, those kinds of injuries.
Exactly. Those are the types of injuries that send chills down your spine just thinking about them. And the article features some pretty intense firsthand accounts from athletes who have suffered these types of bone breaks. It's clear that the pain is excruciating.
And it's not just the initial break that's agonizing, right? It's the long road to recovery, the months of rehab and physical therapy. That's got to be incredibly painful as well.
You're absolutely right. Pain isn't always a fleeting experience. It can linger for weeks, months, even years after the initial injury, especially with serious breaks like the ones described in the article. And speaking of pain that can linger, sometimes the most debilitating pain comes from sources we might not expect, like tetanus.
Tetanus. Yeah, we've all heard of tetanus shots, but it's easy to forget just how serious this infection can be, especially in our modern world.
It's easy to think of it as a thing of the past, but tetanus is still a very real threat, and it's not something to be taken lightly. Tetanus is caused by bacteria found in soil, manure, dust. It's everywhere, and it can cause these incredibly painful muscle spasms and lockjaw.
The article really drives home the importance of staying up to date on those tetanus vaccinations. They're not just a routine precaution. They can truly be life-saving.
Absolutely. Tetanus is a serious condition, and those vaccinations are incredibly effective at preventing it. So folks, if you're due for a tetanus booster, don't put it off. It's a simple step that can make a huge difference in your health and well-being.
And now for the moment of truth. This article claims that the most painful condition is trigeminal neuralgia. Have you heard of this one?
I have, and it's as bad as it sounds. They even call it the suicide disease sometimes, which gives you an idea of how severe and unrelenting the pain can be.
Suicide disease. Just hearing that makes me cringe. What in the world makes this condition so excruciating?
Well, it all centers on the trigeminal nerve, which is responsible for sensations in the face. Imagine a sudden, sharp, electric shock-like pain shooting through your face. That's what people with trigeminal neuralgia experience.
Oof, I can't even imagine. What triggers something like that?
It can be the simplest things. Touching your face, brushing your teeth, even a light breeze can set it off.
That's wild. The article talks about people being afraid to eat, to talk, even to go outside for fear of triggering an attack. That must be so isolating and scary on top of the pain.
Absolutely. Imagine living with that kind of fear and uncertainty every day. It's no wonder it's considered one of the most painful conditions out there.
It's really a stark reminder of how much we take for granted. A simple breeze on your face,
Yeah.
a meal with friends. It puts things in perspective, that's for sure.
It does. It reminds us that pain isn't always visible and that empathy and understanding are so crucial, especially for those living with chronic pain conditions like trigeminal neuralgia.
Well said. So we've traveled from bullet ants to burns to the suicide disease. That's quite a range of painful experiences, and I have to say it's left me with a lot to think about.
Me too. It's amazing how much we still don't know about pain, how complex it is, and how much it varies from person to person.
The article does end on a more universal note, though, bringing it back to something many people have experienced: childbirth.
Which, as many can attest, is no walk in the park. It's often ranked as one of the most intense pains a person can experience.
For sure. But it's also a testament to the incredible resilience of the human body and spirit. It's like this primal ability to endure, adapt, and move through even the most excruciating experiences.
Couldn't agree more. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the world of pain, from the science behind it to the surprising ways it shows up in our lives.
And as always, we want to hear from you. What are your biggest takeaways? What surprised you the most about pain? Have you ever considered how your own experiences might shape your perception of it?
It's such a complex and fascinating subject, one that we could probably explore for days on end. But for now, we'll leave you with this thought.
Is the worst pain always the most physically intense? Or could it be the pain that lingers the longest? The pain that changes us in ways we never expected? Something to ponder, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.